Welcome to the Rich Outdoors, where we break down the tips, tactics, and strategies of hunting's greats to not only help you become better hunters, but to motivate and inspire you between hunting adventures. For more about us, including additional resources on our guests and links to everything we cover in the interview, check out therichoutdoors.net. Well, hello, and welcome to episode 3 of the Rich Outdoors podcast. Today, we'll be talking with Scott Haugen. You might know him from his TV show, Trijicon's The Hunt. To say that Scott has written the book on hunting is an understatement, because he's written dozens, to include currently working on a bear hunting book. So join us as we talk about tips and tactics for this upcoming bear season. And he even gives some great advice on bear meat, which actually is Scott's favorite game meat. So join in. Hey Scott, welcome to the podcast. How are we doing today?
Hey, doing good. Thanks, Cody.
Well, I'm excited to dive into bear hunting with you. It's almost bear season here in Oregon, and my sister actually has a bear tag. I didn't get one this year, but I'm sure a lot of guys are excited to talk bear hunting as it's coming up.
Yeah, bear hunting, it's one of those fastest growing segments nationwide. There's just a lot of interest in it. Bears are, they're an intriguing animal. They're a lot of fun to hunt. Of course, we have the spring and the fall season. They're one of my favorite big game animals to go after anywhere in the world.
Yeah. Well, tell us, did you draw any bear tags, or you got big bear hunting plans this spring?
Yep, I picked up a Southwest Oregon tag, probably go back to Idaho, might be heading back up to Alaska this spring. We usually do 3-4 bear hunts a spring. The whole family has tags this year, so it'll depend on how that tag filling process goes as to what other states I might go to. But we eat a lot of bear. We like hunting a lot of bear, both the spring and the fall.
Wow, I really want to dive into, all the things you're about to go on and all these hunts and that. But why don't you, for those who don't know you, why don't you give us a little bit of background about yourself and kind of how you got started hunting?
Yeah, gladly. Well, like a lot of people out there, I was born into the hunting side of things. Both granddads hunted, both families hunted on my mom and dad's side. So I grew up at an early age doing it. Started running my own trap line in 4th grade, so I didn't have to work in the summers. I could go salmon and steelhead fishing. So grew up in the outdoors, and then got a teaching degree from the University of Oregon, went up to Alaska, taught there for 7 years, taught here in Oregon for a year, went to an international school and taught in Sumatra, Indonesia. And during all those times, when we were up in Alaska, we lived a subsistence lifestyle. My wife, Tiffany, and I did. Overseas, we started hunting internationally, and one thing just led to another. Wrote a magazine article for Cabela's Outfitter Journal about 20 years ago. They ended up asking me to guest host a TV show for them based on that topic. It was back bouncing or fishing for sturgeon at the time, and so I did. And the show won some kind of awards, and that was over 15 years ago. Now we did the first TV show, so now we're just fortunate to write full time and do TV for a living. I think I've been a part of over 400 TV shows. I've written over 1,700 magazine articles, over a dozen books, and give 50, 60 seminars a year around the country, and I enjoy it. Very blessed to make a living at what we do.
Wow. I'm going to be honest, that probably raises more questions and more intrigue than it leaves answers. But so how long did you live in Alaska?
We were up in Alaska for 7 years. We lived up in the Arctic. We were school teachers there at a couple little Eskimo villages. Up there, hunted grizzly bears and killed a man-eating polar bear up there.
Wow.
Came into the village and ate a local Inupiat Eskimo man and tracked the bear down in 42 below zero temperatures and ended up shooting him with a 30-06 and hunted grizzlies and brown bears up there. And last year got my biggest brown bear, a 10'9" bear. up on the Alaska Peninsula. So bears are a lot of fun. It's it's a fun way to make a living. I get questions literally every day from people around the country. How do I make a living in the outdoors? And it's tough. It's kind of put it in perspective. When I first started riding as a full-time outdoor rider, there were just over 200 of us. I think 204, 205 in the country, where they were just supporting their family on outdoor riding. And put that in perspective, there are over 400 players in the NBA. So it's tough breaking into just the riding side of the outdoors. And TV has changed a lot too, but that's a whole other story.
Yeah, no kidding. And I mean, you're an excellent rider as well, which helps, and you have the background for that. Tell me a little bit about how you got started in bear hunting specifically, or when did your passion for hunting turn into bear hunting, and what is it about bear hunting that you find so much passion in?
I guess it started young. I was 5 or 6 years old, and I was out deer hunting with my dad, and we had a bear cross in front of us, and Dad ended up shooting the thing, and it started at a real early age, but I didn't hunt bear until high school. And hunted them with hounds then, and got a really big bear. My very first bear was a giant bear for the state of Oregon. And as kind of things just progressed, moving to Alaska, where we had a lot of bears. We had a lot of polar bears in the one village we lived in. Had a lot of grizzly bears in the interior in the other village we lived in. So I was just really intrigued with bears. We were up in the Arctic. There weren't any black bears up there. But during my travels in the spring, I ended up hunting bear in Alaska, and in the business here, shooting TV shows. Gosh, over the last, 15 years, I've been on numerous bear hunts all throughout Canada and throughout the West, both the spring and the fall again. And I've been fortunate to take over 50 bears now, and not a lot, but bears are one of those animals that I find there's so much to learn. I wanted to write a book on Western bear hunting. I actually sat down about 3 years ago to start writing the thing, and I thought, I have a lot more to learn before I put this thing into print here. So bears are just a very intriguing animal. They're so different in their behaviors and in their ways and in their mannerisms, especially during the course of a season, spring season being a prime example. What they're doing now is far different than what they're going to be doing 5-6 weeks from now, 8 weeks from now as the rut comes up. So they're just a very intriguing animal. Some are, so afraid of humans, some don't care. I've had them climb up, trees that I was in trying to get to us at the tree stand. And, I've been within 4 or 5 feet of bear that just didn't care that, we were there. At the same time, I've seen them, the wind change and had them bust me at 500-600 yards away, where you'd have thought there's no way they could even detect you. So they're just an intriguing animal. I've studied them a lot. My background is in biology and animal behavior, and I've studied these animals a lot, and there's just so much to learn about them. And that's, I think, what intrigues me most.
In my experience of bear hunting, the bear behavior is one of those things that's amazing to watch, and you feel like the more you see, the less you know. And like you said, that defies all logic half the time. I want to get into talking bear behavior. And like you said, when it comes to spring bear specifically, it seems like there's a lot of contradicting advice. So let's chat about your thoughts on bear behavior, just specifically throughout the spring and as that season progresses.
It is. It's interesting. I find that a lot of their behavior is dictated by weather, and ultimately it just comes down to the food. Bears are very largely driven by food. And probably the main reason behind that is they have a very, very short digestive tract. They don't digest food very well at all. So they have to eat a lot of food to get, to optimize the nutrients level that's being absorbed by their body. So with that in mind, basically all I try to do when I'm hunting bears, no matter what time of year, is capitalize on food sources. Here in the spring early like this, we're getting a lot of sunshine. We're coming off a very mild winter. Honestly, don't think a lot of bears even hibernated. Technically, bears aren't true hibernators. They go into a state of torpor. Their body doesn't shut down to where they're true hibernators. So basically, they go into a deep sleep. And during that state in the winter months, if it's mild, these bears will be, active all winter long, especially on the coast. I think this year, my boy killed a really good bear right at Thanksgiving. That bear should have been, in its den by then down there on the coast. So, behaviorally, what I'm looking for right now is to see what food sources they're hitting on. There's not a lot of nutrients in the grass at this time right yet. There will be here in another few weeks as we get more sunshine and, more photosynthesis taking place. But right now, with some of the intermittent rains we've had and a lot of the sun, a lot of sunshine that we've had, bears are, they're going to be out there cruising the south-facing hillsides. That's where food sources are optimized. They'll be looking for bulbs and tubers, and they will be eating grass. So, right now you're looking for a pretty concentrated food source, and for those bears to hopefully usually be sticking to a small area. But with this mild spring that we've had and mild winter that we're coming off of, bears might be moving a little bit more than usual.
Well, you touched on that hibernation, and I think that's one of those misconceptions about bears. What are the biggest misconceptions that you hear from folks about bears and bear behavior?
Probably the biggest thing is everyone thinks they're going to be attacked by a bear or eaten by a bear. It's I think there's a lot of fear that's intertwined within people's, psyche when they're going out there to hunt bears, and they think, oh my gosh, bear's going to come after me. There's several seasons I've spent, 250, 300 days in the field, and I've never felt threatened by a bear. The only time I've really felt real nervous around a bear, we were fly fishing up in Alaska on the Brooks River, and all the Forest Service people, all the game biologists, everyone was out of there. All the cabins were boarded up, so it was just us and just me and a buddy. And we got dropped off on a float plane up the head end of the river, and wade fished our way all the way down. And we had a couple run-ins with bears there. Usually the wardens are there to keep the bears off away from me. But I had to swat a couple in the nose with a fly rod. And when you're doing that to a 1,500-pound bear, it's that's a little unnerving. But as far as black bears, it's interesting. Black bears actually kill more people than polar bear and grizzly bears combined, and it's usually a smaller bear that does it. Under 200 pounds. It's just a bear that's they're very fast. 0 to 35 in a few seconds. So, they're faster than a racehorse. So a lot of people think they're lethargic. Not real quick. They can turn on you, but if there are other food sources in the area, it's usually a rogue bear, that turns on a human or someone that's been accustomed to humans, or, getting between a sow and a cub, which really isn't going to happen out in the wilderness very much. The likelihood of that is more around, humanized settings, campgrounds, national parks, things like that.
So is that the number with the black bears and more attacks than grizzlies, brown bears, and polars? Is that just due to the law of numbers, and there's a lot more black bears throughout the country, and those situations are going to come up more, or where's that stem from?
Yeah, it's definitely related to that. More people are camping where there are black bears. We've intruded more into black bear habitat. And at the same time, black bears are still expanding in great numbers throughout the entire country. So you have human intrusion into the black bear's habitat, and black bear numbers expanding. And humans are an easy food source: garbage, campsites, things like that. So bears associate with that very quickly. And once they get a taste of easy food, they become fearless. And once they become fearless, then that's when humans get put at risk.
Yeah. So how does the bear behavior, specifically between baiting stations and spot and stalk, do those bears act differently, or what's your experience been with that?
They do. I love baiting bears, and I'll get a lot of people say, baiting bears isn't real hunting, and, hunting them with hounds, isn't fair chase. And, the thing about bears is, people, it's crazy. I've talked to so many people that have spent, 10, 15, 20 years in the woods and never even seen a bear. But yet there are so many of them out there. Oregon still has a population of around 30, 35,000, but they're very, very difficult to even get a census count on because of the thick brush they live in. A 300-pound bear can curl up and, pretty much hide itself under the chair you're sitting in right now. They don't take up a lot of space like an elk. They're not easy to see. They're very quiet in the woods. They move very stealthily, and, they're predators. So, they're very selective in their movements. They're very precise in what they do. They're rarely anywhere by accident. But that's one of the things I love about hunting them over bait is just getting to watch their behavior. And I've seen so many odd behaviors over the years. Where I've bow hunted them out of a tree stand, and the string that I use to pull the bow up. When I've got the bow up in hand, then I'll drop that string down. And I've had bears, sit at the bottom of the tree and lay on their back and swatting the string and licking it. I've had bears track me all the way to the tree, and I've had them come up the tree where I've had to, drop arrows on them. One had to pour a thermos of hot coffee on, just to try to get it away from me. It was a little sow, not even 200 pounds, but she was aggressive. I didn't want to kill her, but she was after us. She'd have no question. She was trying to eat us. She was very, very hostile bear, but like I said, I didn't want to kill her. So seeing them in those situations, and then, what's really intriguing to me is you get out and hunt these things with hounds, and you see how many bears are really out there. Bears are one of those animals that, you get the Hollywood or the Disney, connotation or vision of these bears, that they're nice, little bears. They live in a park. You can feed them by hand. And it's not the case. There are elk herds in Eastern Oregon, for example, where bears are killing over 70% of the calves. So, it's a lot of people think cougars are the major predator of these elk herds, wolves, and so forth. But bears are actually killing more than anything. And in order to keep the bear numbers in check, it's hunting them with hounds, hunting them over bait are the most selective ways to do that. You can size up, the big boars. You don't have to shoot sows with cubs. Obviously, that's against the law. But there are no mistakes made when you're running them with hounds and baiting. And again, the baiting thing is very intriguing. They're in a social setting there. They're in a dominance hierarchy when it comes to a bait. It's pretty cool to have 5, 6, 8 bears walking around you, 15, 20 yards from you, all of them, not really concerned about you, but really maintaining the social order that within their numbers there to optimize the food intake. And whereas spot and stalk, it's just you and the bear. That's when they're on edge. They have incredible noses, and being able to capitalize on their weaknesses is where it's at.
Is those bears, or are those bears that are near the bait stations, are they more dehumanized, or are they acting different around the bait piles because they're used to being around humans? That human scent is around the bait stations, and how do those bears act differently than your spot and stalk bears that may spook, like you said, from 500 yards away?
It's different, and I think that's what's so intriguing about bears. You really can't encapsulate one behavior that you see into the process or thought process that all bears are going to behave that way. I've been on a bait where we haven't been ready, and a big boar comes in, and he gets a look at us, and we don't see him again the entire season. The only time we see him are, nighttime trail cameras, and he's just in for 15, 20 minutes, grab his food and get out of there. Some bears don't care. Some bears know you're there. They just don't mind. They'll just come right in. And where you really learn a lot is when you're not trying to kill a bear, when you're actually out there and you're watching them. Maybe you've already filled a tag and you're just out observing, or maybe you're looking for a specific bear. Maybe you want a cinnamon bear, and all these black bears and chocolate bears are coming in, or small bears or sows. There's really no rhyme or reason as to their behavior sometimes, and it's very, very different. And I think that's what makes them so intriguing. I've had bears where they literally will sit on a bait all day. I mean, they'll come in 6, 8, 10 times, and they're never more than 100 yards from the bait the entire day. They just come in and they get their fill all the time. And they just don't want other bears to get that. Then you have a big boar that maybe moves in, and I've found where boars have killed other bears on bait sites, and talk about establishing a hierarchy of dominance. It's pretty interesting what's out there with these bears.
Is that a common thing within bear behavior? Is that type of aggression like you would see with mountain lions or something?
Yeah, they're very aggressive, and I've heard bears fight, and I've seen bear fights, and yeah, fighting to the death is not uncommon. Of course, they're most notorious for killing sows with cubs about this time of year, a little bit closer to the rut. And the thought process is they're not killing the sows, they're killing the cubs. This year's cubs that are now coming out of the den, and killing those to send the sow back into estrus so he can breed with her. So that's a fairly common thing. But I've found a number of big boars that have been killed by other boars in the area as well.
So when is the bear rut, so to speak?
Bear rut is usually, rule of thumb throughout the West here, is the month of June.
Okay.
It's interesting. These big black bears, the boars, ODF&W has been doing some radio telemetry study with these things in the Cascades, and they find that, right now, this time of year, for about the next, 4, 5, 6 weeks, the boars are pretty sedentary. They'll get their food source kind of nailed down. That and pretty much feed most of the day on that food source for weeks on end, and then as they get ready to get ready to prepare for the rut, they'll start cruising, and it's not uncommon for these bears to cover 25 miles a day.
Wow.
Walking up and down the rugged country of the Cascades. They cover a lot of ground in the Cascades, more than in the Coast Range, I would imagine. Bear densities are higher in the Coast Range, obviously, too. Mm-hmm. So they'll cover a lot of ground. My favorite time to hunt bears is spring bears is that last week in May. These boars are very aggressive. You can call very effectively. Then they're fearless. They'll come into a call. It's pretty cool calling in these bears as well.
I really want to dive into calling bears when we get into talking a little bit about strategy. But what was I going to ask you? With the range, or with the bear range, and also the timing of the rut, you hear a lot about when the bears come out of quote unquote hibernation or slumber. When are those bears start coming out? And obviously that depends on weather and food source, and what bears are coming out first. I've heard a little bit about, bigger bears coming out first. Is that common, or are we not seeing bigger bears until later in the year? Or later in the spring, sorry.
Yeah, I think the big bears come out. I think they're pretty localized in their movements when they come out of their sleep. Same time, I have buddies that been hunting coyotes all winter long, and they've called in bears every month this year, January, February, and March. So the bears are up and active. In fact, this year, I think it's the earliest that it's ever been issued. Both Oregon and Washington, I think it was the Forest Service, issued warnings on hiking trails that bears are already up and active. They did that a few weeks ago. So there's been a lot of bear sightings in both Oregon and Washington, the western parts of both states, which is unusual. Again, usually bears' behavior is dictated by photoperiodism, lengthening and shortening daylight hours. But I think with this warm weather, the bears were just up. They, their bodies didn't, enter such an intense state of torpor where they were in a deep sleep. I don't think they will have burned a lot of calories, lost a lot of fat this winter, which usually that burns off a lot, during the cold times. So what's that going to do to the bears? Is that going to, keep them more concentrated? Are they going to have more, energy, less calories that they're going to have to consume to get that fat content up before the rut? It's going to be interesting. But, I think back to your question, usually I'm seeing big boars first, and then seeing sows and cubs pretty early as well. The sows and cubs a lot of times will cover a little bit more ground. As far as moving up and down hillsides looking for food, and I think a lot of that is because they're running into boars and they don't want to set up camp in one spot, live in that one log unit or that one open meadow, because they just want to keep those cubs away from the boars. So usually, we're seeing the big boars first. I've killed a lot of big boars early in the season, even when it's a terrible winter and very, very cold. I've killed them in the snow and the ice, sleet, 30-degree temperatures opening day of April in Western Oregon, when you'd think there wouldn't be a bear out and around. And, if a bear's hungry, they can brave any conditions. It just comes down to what their stomach wants.
Now, obviously, I want to jump into hunting tactics, but first I want to talk to you a little bit about location and choosing location, so to speak. Now, it's going to vary, obviously, between coastal bears, the Cascade bears, and even farther west or east into the Rockies. But what's your strategy, or how do you go about selecting a new area, so to speak?
That's a really good question, and I get asked that a lot. I had a guy sent me an email yesterday. He said, I've had my trail cameras out for over a month, and I haven't even caught a bear on film yet. What's going on? And my first, response was, wow, I don't even set trail cameras out in the spring because the chances of having a bear crossing them are, go buy a lottery ticket.
Yeah.
If that happens. That's the only time you're going to, consistently catch them on a trail camera is, over a bait station. Of course, we can't bait, in Oregon and Washington, so we're, kind of up against the odds right there. So how do you find a spot to hunt? Number one thing I'll do is I'll get up in glass. I'll get high points, and I really want to just concentrate on those south-facing slopes.
When are you starting to do that? What time of year are you starting to scout or whatnot?
I'll do it right now. I don't want to go out earlier. I'll usually wait until the season opens so bears are moving around. If you come to a place that looks good, you're not seeing any bears in it right now, come back, every week or two because the bears might just not have moved into that area yet. My favorite habitat to look for is a south-facing slope that has big rock bluffs around it, especially on the upper end. Reason is there, when you get rain, that runoff is going to come, go down the rocks and it's going to accumulate in greater quantity. At the base of the rocks, you're going to get better, green up, faster green up at that stage. Grasses are bears' number one food source. So that's all I'm really looking for in the spring. If you're hunting over in eastern Oregon, I don't know if there was any snow over there this year, but hunting right below the snow line is a very good starting point. Again, you're going to get that increased snow melt. Over east, there are a lot more, wild potatoes, celery, little bulbs and tubers that are going to be germinating under the ground. So look for dig marks. Usually, it's a horizontal line underneath the snow line. Again, wherever this moisture concentrates, that's where the food sources are going to be growing the most. If I don't see any bear in there, but I feel it's good, I'm going to cruise a lot of logging roads. A lot of times bears feed, almost extensively along logging roads, again, because you get runoff from the rain. This is where there's usually a lot of sunlight, so the grass grows very quickly on both sides of the roads. It's the same reason you see so many roadkill deer this time of year and during the fall when that rain, hits I-5, for example. All the green grass is right on the side of the road, so that green grass attracts animals, and it's the same with bears in the woods. So, look for droppings, look for tracks after a rain, see where they've been walking on muddy roads. When I'm trying to find a place to hunt, if I'm not seeing bear and the area looks good, then I'm looking for bear sign.
How do you go about selecting units? Or if, say, you were going to go to a new state, obviously you've probably hunted just about every state, and you probably know just about every unit in the country. But if you were looking at hunting a completely new area, what are key features or landmarks or types of terrain that you're looking at?
Again, I just try to get, pretty high, not too high if you're going to some of the Rocky Mountain states. But around here in Oregon, pretty much anywhere in the coast, you're going to find bears. I don't want areas that are overgrown with brush that are like more than waist high at me. Even a 250-pound bear is only going to be, waist high when it's on all fours to the average guy. So I don't want stuff that's overgrown. I want stuff that's very open, stuff that's, where the sunlight is going to allow the grass to grow. I want open units and hillsides that are dominated by green grass, not by reprod, not by brush, not by areas where, if I look down to adjust my spotting scope, I might, or binoculars, I might, miss seeing a bear as he rolls over or stands up and moves from one spot to another. I want something that's very exposed and very open.
Yeah, it's amazing how you can look at an area. We hunt a lot over Eastern Oregon, and you'll see a bear, and all of a sudden he disappears for hours, and you don't realize it, but once you get down there, that brush, is only waist high, and that bear can slip in and out of that brush for hours.
Yeah, they can. That gives a lot of, people, there's a lot of doubt created when a bear disappears like that. And, I've been on bears where I've watched them lay down and stuff like that. And, it was, usually good bears that I'll sit and wait on all day. You might spot them in the morning and then they're gone. They're there. But basically, they're just spending the day sleeping. And, they wake up 5, 6, 7 hours later and they stand up right in the same spot. And you shoot there and you go over there, like you say, it's waist high stuff. But it doesn't take much to hide a bear.
That could probably be said for about any type of hunting and patience. And animals tend to have a lot more patience than we do. And we put that self-doubt in our own head. And and then the wheels start turning, and we think we got to make moves long before we should.
Yeah. As long as you play the wind, you can kill a bear. Their best sense is their nose. They have phenomenal noses, and when you kill a bear, cape it out and look inside the nose. The nose structure of those things and all the bony and cartilaginous tissues they have, they can easily smell, a dead animal 5 miles away. Polar bears have been, noted smelling seals and tracking them down for over 10 miles. So
wow.
Imagine having a nose that good. And, if the wind is ever bad with the bear, if I'm spotting and stalking him, I give it up. If you see a bear and you can't get to him because of the wind in the spring, just, back out of there. He's usually not going anywhere.
So if you have your choice between a bad wind or being within eyesight of a bear, obviously it's within reason of distance. Or how worried are you about their eyesight and on a stalk?
I'm not real worried. A bear's number one defense is their nose. They have better eyesight than I think what a lot of people credit them for. But boy, if they can't smell it, a lot of times there's doubt as to what. As to what's approaching. And so when that happens, if they smell you, they're busted. You're busted. Well, unless you get an aggressive bear. Sometimes I've had them smell me and, start coming right at me. And you think, okay, this is pretty cool. This bear's not afraid. They're, coming in to get you. Even when I've been calling them in, they've made us, and I know, wind has changed and they've smelled us. And, sometimes they turn around and run off, and sometimes they keep coming at you. So, usually when they catch wind of you, then they're pretty, and they don't run off. They keep coming at you. Then it's it's game on. That you're probably going to have to shoot that bear. It's closer. So that's fun, and that's part of the joys of bear hunting. Is the thrill and the uncertainty and the danger is what creates a lot of the excitement for these bears. But I've never really felt unsafe, while hunting them. As far as their eyesight, I don't get careless with my movements. I really don't care if a bear sees me, but I don't want to be skylined. I don't want to be caught standing up. I don't want to, move when a bear is looking my way. I, want to try to keep a backdrop, either, timber or, vegetation below me, or behind me, I should say. So I just want to, I don't want to be careless. Again, as long as the wind is good, you can kill a bear.
So do you have a favorite hunting style of bear? I know you do spend a lot of time with spot and stalk, but does it change between bow and rifle?
No, I like it all. And I think that's one of the great things about bears. I've killed a lot with a bow, a lot with rifles, a lot with muzzleloader, crossbow even. So I like the diversity of ways you can hunt bears. Not only with what weapon you're going to choose to hunt these things with, but also, the baiting and the hounds. I love hound hunting. I love running behind hounds and watching the dogs work, and, the uncertainty of not knowing what's going to happen. I've, had some major train wrecks on hound hunts. We've lost hounds, and we've had some major disasters with that. But, it's interesting to see these bears or these dogs work, that are bred just for that purpose in life. And that's a lot of fun. Again, I could sit over bear baits all day. My wife says, gosh, you can sit in a tree stand, for 13, 14 hours a day, yet you don't, want to get in line for coffee when there are 2 cars ahead of you. It's kind of what you said earlier, the patience game is huge, and that's where you, create opportunity, and that's where you learn about these things.
So if you had one way that you could only hunt bears one way, which would it be? Calling them.
Really? I like them. Yeah. I love bears coming in. It's hit and miss. You might call, 10 days in a row and not see a bear. And then, as things start kicking in with the rut and their aggression, or you're in the right place, you might call in 2 or 3 in one setting. You just never know. It's very hit and miss, just like calling any game. But, when you're calling in an animal, call in a lot of elk, rattle in a lot of blacktails, call in moose, call in a lot of animals in Africa. But when you're calling in a bear, he's coming to kill you. You're the food source, and that just raises the bar to another level. And I like that kind of excitement.
Well, let's walk through your strategy on that, because I'm super curious about calling bears. I've dabbled a little bit, but with 0 success, and I think the confidence comes in, and you're like, well, let's spot and stalk works, stick with it. So what's your strategy on the calling, and how do I become more successful with it?
Yeah, ideally, if you can spot a bear and you can call and observe that bear's behavior, that's a huge advantage. And that's where I've learned so much about calling over the years. It's not like a bull elk that you're going to call and usually comes in. These things don't come in as regularly or as routinely as elk will. They're kind of more like a blacktail. Sometimes they will, sometimes they won't. But where you can observe a bear and his behavior and kind of clue into what they're doing. That's where I've learned a lot about these things. Sometimes I've blown a call. They're 500, 600, 800 yards away, and as soon as they hear the sound, I mean, they're out of there. They're 0 to 35 and across the ridge as quick as could be. Other times they'll start coming right at you and they'll run right at you. Usually, what happens is they'll hear you. A lot of times they'll acknowledge you and they'll start moving your way, but they'll get sidetracked and they'll just go back to feeding. And it's not like a coyote setup, where you're going to call and then wait 2, 3, 4, 5 minutes and then maybe call again. Once I get a bear coming, I usually call and I keep calling. Sometimes if I'm calling blindly and where I'm not seeing the bear, I'm just cold calling. There's a lot of sign in the area. The wind is good. I'll set up there usually for an hour before I move on, and I'm constantly calling the whole time. I'm not giving a break for even for 30 seconds. And the reason is because these bears can lose concentration very quickly, and I base that on a lot of the calling I've done where I've been able to see bears. So if I set up and call and get a bear coming in, and then all of a sudden he catches wind of something else, he might totally leave the area, and I've got to really try to keep his interest piqued by using calls. And I'll use multiple calls: high pitch, low pitch, raspy, rabbits, calf, elk distress calls, bear cub bulls, goats, woodpecker sounds. This is where electronic calls have really helped a lot in bear calling, because you can vary the sound that you're offering them. And plus, man, it's hard sitting blowing on a handheld call for an hour. I mean, you feel like pass out and you're out of water. It's tough.
That's a dangerous situation.
Right, yeah.
Are you using calling as a plan B per se to spot and stalk?
It depends where we're at. Calling's my favorite. I always have calls with me in the spring. If I see a bear in a good situation, maybe it's across a unit, and I don't feel I can get to that bear because it's too short of grass, too open. Maybe the thermals are going to be swirling because I have to drop way down a hillside and then come back up the opposite hillside. I'll usually try to scope out what the grass is doing, what the treetops are doing before I make any type of move to see if there, is consistent wind movement, so I can, move in and kill that bear. If there's any doubt that I can't, then I'll usually try calling and try to bring that bear in. But calling's my favorite, and it's one of those things I've taken enough bears over the years where I don't really, it's not about numbers anymore. It's about the it's about the excitement and the different ways of hunting these things. So if I have a chance of calling in a bear, that's my favorite approach.
Is calling one of those things that I could find success if I say I spot a bear and he's in the bottom of a canyon and I make a move on him, but he's moves into the timber before you get there, before you get in position. How well is that call going to work in pulling him out of the timber, or is he going to try to just stay in the brush once you start calling him?
Good question. We've done that a number of times, and again, it comes back to, the number one thing that bears' behavior, kind of circulates around is their stomach. So if they were out feeding, they're still going to be hungry. If they go back into the timber, sometimes it's to take a nap. Sometimes it's to move to another food source, maybe dig around for mushrooms. Maybe they have a kill back in there they're going to feed on. But if there's a bear that's moved back in the woods, I've had very good success over the years of calling them back out. Have done it multiple times with my boys, with myself, out there, and even with friends. And a lot of times you'll get those bears hung up, but a lot of times you can hear them popping their teeth. It's very loud, and it's almost like they don't want to come back out, but they know that that predator-prey drive is kicking in, and they'll be back in the woods tearing up stumps. They can be very noisy. When they're coming back out of the woods, which that's a pretty cool feeling. But I'll use that approach quite a bit. If I see a bear and I get in there and he's moved into the woods, just set up as long as that wind is good. A lot of times you can pull him back out in the opening.
So what does that jaw popping? I've heard that before in the woods and being around bears. What exactly does that mean in bear lingo?
It's a display of dominance. They'll get in there and they're just letting you know they're around. It's almost like a frustration, aggressive frustration to them. A lot of times, if they're not, they're obviously, if they think you're a predator out there and they're popping their jaws and tearing stuff up like that, they're not, going to try to come out and kill you for food, but they're just getting frustrated. It's almost like they're, like it's the kid in the toy store that wants to buy something that doesn't have the money, but wants it really bad, but knows he can't have it, type of scenario. So it's more of an aggression. And a lot of times you'll see that happening closer to the rut as these sows are, kind of protecting their cubs. A lot of times you'll get sows doing that. And you have boars that are, kind of edgy. Bears can be grumpy too, and a lot of times, they won't pop their teeth, but a lot of times you'll get a grumpy bear in there that just doesn't want to come out. He's establishing dominance by, growling and roaring and tearing up stumps and logs and popping his teeth, and it's loud. You can hear it for several hundred yards.
Wow, this is definitely good advice, and it's I'm excited to try some of the calling techniques, but I want to talk for a second about cooking and bear meat. Another topic that I feel like gets misunderstood quite a bit. I mean, a lot of people think bear meat is not good to eat. What are your thoughts on bear meat? And I know you have a huge cooking background, and your wife and yourself have all the cooking books, so I'm sure you're an expert on cooking meat. I'd love to hear what you think.
Well, I'm not an expert on cooking. I'm an expert on killing and preparing and taste testing. So my wife is the cook. So don't ask me any cooking questions. I will tell you that the bear is probably my favorite eating big game animal in North America. I'll take it over elk. I'll take it over moose. It's my favorite. It's a very mild meat. It's a large grain meat. I like the texture of it. When we were working on our big game cookbook, we had a lot of families that were taste testing the meat that we were giving them. So when Tiffany goes about writing a cookbook, she'll do a couple things. She'll develop the recipe, get it to where she thinks it's perfect, and then she'll give the recipe along with several types of meat to families to test out and make sure that they can follow the recipe and it turns out for them. And then another thing she'll do is she'll just have families taste test the multiple recipes. And when we were working on the big game book, it was pretty interesting because they didn't know if they were getting antelope or sheep or goat or bear or elk or whatever it was. And it was hands down people preferred bear over any of the other meats. And why? I think they got over the mindset that it was bear because they didn't know. A lot of times when you told them, well, you just chose bear over elk, and they couldn't believe it. So I think a lot of it is the mindset. You get a bear skinned out, and a lot of people, say, gosh, it looks like a human or whatever. And bear is our favorite eating meat, and I think that they're my favorite eating meat. And we eat a lot of it. We'll eat 2 or 3 bears a year, sometimes 4 or 5 bears a year. I think we got 4 last year in the family. So we eat a lot of bear. We don't make it into sausage or into jerky. We use roasts, steaks. We will grind it up into hamburger on ourselves, but we don't mask it with anything. I think the biggest thing about bear meat is the process of getting good tasting bear meat starts the moment you pull the trigger. And bears are a lot of work. When you kill a bear, the fun of the hunt ends. They're like
yes, very true.
Taking care of a sack. Yeah, like taking care of a sack of potatoes. It's not easy, but. Usually people want to get bears out of the woods whole. They want to drive around and show all their buddies the bear. Maybe they gutted it, maybe they didn't, but they've left the hide on. A bear hide holds in a lot of heat, and bear fat can be very thick, which holds in a lot of heat. And bear fat is a lot softer in texture compared to deer and elk. So when I'm out in the woods, almost all the time, I'm boning that animal out on the spot where I've killed him. I'll get the hide off them right away. I'll quarter them out. Get all the meat off of them, the neck meat, the back strap, tenderloins, rib meat. Get all that off of them, and then get the fat away from that meat as well. And then on the quarters, I'll actually start separating the muscle mass and even deboning it out in the field. The bones of bear are very big, they're very dense, and they hold a lot of heat. So even though it might be cooling down on the outside, it's actually breaking down and rotting on the inside. So the biggest thing that I want to do as soon as I get that bear on the ground, I want to get the meat off the hide off the bear, the meat away from the bone, and get it cooling quickly, so that it's going to be less gamey tasting.
Now, I've heard that the bear fat actually is acidic and starts to break down faster than fats of, like, say, elk or deer. So you're stripping you're stripping the bear of all the fat then right away?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and as that breaks down, then that's going to, create these rancid flavors that you'll get associated with bear meat. So the interesting thing about bear meat is usually I'll take an extra bag or game bag along, and I'll trim off, fillet all that fat off of the muscle and bring it back. Especially on a fall bear, it's really good. And then Tiffany cooks that, renders it down, and she uses it a lot in cooking. Bear fat is phenomenal for cooking.
That's definitely something I want to try this year. I have not done that yet. But have you? I know you've experienced and taste tested more bears than anyone. As far as the myth goes that what a bear eats is what he tastes like, what's your thoughts on that?
It's pretty accurate when you get into animals that have been feeding on dead salmon for a couple weeks. That's those bears don't taste very good at all.
Is that why Alaskans choose not to eat the brown bears?
Yeah, exactly. It's some of the best eating meat I've had is grizzly bears up in Alaska that we've killed on the tundra. Where they've been eating berries all fall. The ones that are up north, where there are no salmon runs, they'll exclusively feed on vegetation, pretty exclusively. So those bears are incredibly good eating. You tell people you eat a grizzly bear, and a lot of them just turn their nose up, but it can be incredibly good eating meat. At the same time, some of the black bears I've had in some of the coastal streams along Alaska, they're terrible. They're good early in the year, in August or whatever, early September, but you get some a little bit later where they're feeding on dead carcasses. They're not real good table fare, but the bears around here are really good. We've killed several bears in their late teens that have aged out. A couple in their over 20 years old. Bears live a long time. Some of those have been, they looked almost emaciated, just not a lot of fat on them. Their skeletal system, is kind of deteriorated down to like an old aging person type of stature, and some of those have been our better eating bears. Whether that's because they're too old and live a sedentary lifestyle, so the muscles aren't as I guess as firm or as in good a shape as they used to be. If that's why, I'm not sure. At the same time, we've killed a lot of bears in their prime that are incredibly good eating.
Do you age your bear meat at all, or how long do you let that hang?
We don't age our bears, maybe a day or two. That's it. Again, the acidity of that fat. There's a lot of fat intertwined in the muscle of bears. So we don't want that to really break down and start aging. We'll do it for a day or two. What we'll usually do is most of the time I'll butcher that bear in the field, get it in game bags, pack it out, and it's usually wrapped up and in the freezer, within 24 hours. Then when we get ready to cook it, I should say when Tiffany gets ready to cook it, she'll take it out, and it'll be labeled bear roast or bear steaks or, bear backstrap, whatever it is. She'll take it out and put it on a cookie sheet or a little cookie rack, put a plate under it, and then she'll dry age it in the refrigerator. So you might do that for 4 or 5, 10 days. 5 days is usually optimal. So even though it's been frozen, take it out 4, 5, 6 days ahead of time. Let it age in the refrigerator. You're going to get a little bit of a dark crust that's going to form on it, but the blood's going to, separate from it, drip down into the plate, and the air will be able to circulate all the way around it because it's on that cookie rack. It'll age it, it'll tenderize it, and it'll taste really good.
I've actually heard that from others too, so I'm excited. I want to move kind of laterally and talk a little bit about your gear, or hunting gear. What's some of the most important pieces of gear that you have specifically for bear hunting?
For bear hunting, it's there's not a whole lot. I prefer big bore guns over small bore. A lot of times because you're shooting these animals on the edge of brush lines or on ridges where you don't want them to go real far. So with the bear, I'd rather have too much gun than not enough. at the same time, it really comes down to shot placement. I mean, I've seen bears killed with 243s. My boy killed a big bear this last fall with a 257 Weatherby. Dropped the bear on the spot. Bears are very easy to kill. You double lung a bear, get a broadside. It's crazy. I've killed so many bears with a bow where I've double lunged them and they're honestly dead within 10 yards. It's like, did that just happen?
Wow.
So bears, if you double lung them, they're not going anywhere. If you single lung them, it can be quite a pack. They're quite a process trying to find them. If you gut shoot them, it can turn pretty ugly. With that tracking job, they can be very tough if you don't hit them. So I like a big bore gun. I like having good binoculars, 10 power binoculars, and a spotting scope. I'll use both of those, and I'll set up and be patient during the course of the day. I like using shooting sticks. When I got into TV, you really can't afford to miss on TV. A lot of times you're looking at shots, coming down to costing tens of thousands of dollars if you miss, with all the business that can exchange hands, with TV shows, people booking hunts and network costs and so forth. So it's not just going out and having a fun time pulling the trigger all the time. There's a lot of pressure, so you can't miss. So I started using tripod shooting sticks versus bipod. I want to be absolutely rock steady. I don't want to miss hit any animal, but especially a bear. I want to make sure I have a pack with enough, water. I like using a hydration system instead of a bottle of water. I want that hose hanging over, in front of my mouth all day, so I drink out of it. I want to stay hydrated, especially on these warm days. And probably the biggest thing for me, as well as a thermocell, it's the bug repellent unit. That thing works phenomenal. I tested that out up in Alaska when they first made the move into the hunting market over 10 years ago, and I mean that's the best testing ground for something like that. But it's going to keep mosquitoes away. It's going to keep you hunting longer. It's going to keep white socks and no-see-ums away as well. And that's something that not only helps when you're hunting, but a lot of times you kill a bear, on the edge of the forest or down in a creek bottom or a swampy area, and it's just inundated with mosquitoes. And a lot of times I'll keep that attached to me on my pack where it's burning. And then a lot of times when I get a kill, I'll put it, actually position it on the carcass and work downwind from it, so it keeps those bugs away.
Yeah, those are a must-have if you want to head to Alaska and hunt bears.
Yeah, or even throughout Oregon. I use them a lot in Western Oregon and Western Washington. Wherever there's a mosquito, if there's one mosquito in the state, it'll find me.
So if you had someone that wanted to come out west and go bear hunting, just the iconic bear hunting, which for a lot of guys is a good time of year. They're not missing whitetails, they're not missing deer or elk or anything else. What's your recommendation for just a good, inexpensive hunt to go on out west? And also one that you're going to get the full experience of bear hunting.
Of bear hunting, Oregon probably has one of the best opportunities for bears of anywhere I've hunted. You can get tags over the counter. Or 1 or 2 points to draw them in some of the draw areas. There's still a lot of public land access, and we just have a lot of bears. That southwest part of the state, there are a lot of bears down there. So that's a good one. I mean, you can camp, take a tent and camp, bring, get a camper or whatever. It's not, those coastal hunts, not like you're very far from anywhere, so you can get a hotel at night. But, with bear hunting, I think that's one of the best opportunities. There's some good wilderness hunts, in Idaho. You're looking a little bit more of a strenuous thing there, but at the same time in Idaho you can bait. So being able to go out and bait on your own is a lot of fun as well. Trying to figure out bear behavior. It's that's pretty intriguing. I think a lot of times there's a science to baiting, which is a lot of fun to me. But I think those are two really good options for people. At the same time, be in shape. This is this is not an easy country to cover sometimes, and be able to shoot long. I've hunted with a lot of guys that are traveling out west and won't shoot over 100, 150 yards. If you're not willing to punch the trigger at 400 yards, then you might want to look at a baited hunt versus a spot and stalk hunt in some of the rugged coastal terrain we have. I'd take the coast over the Cascades just because of bear densities.
And as far as people coming out here, is that something they can do on their own, or would you recommend guides? Specifically, I guess the coastal side or either the eastern side, either one.
There's enough public land access. Fish and Game, officers are very helpful. They want bear numbers down as well. So if they know in Eastern Oregon that this spot and this unit is a good one, where they're seeing a lot of calf elk predation because of bears, they're going to steer you in that direction. They want bears dead. They know that we're not baiting in Oregon. We don't have hounds, so bear populations continue to rise, and hunting is really the best tool to keep those numbers in check. They just don't have the natural predators out there other than themselves. So Fish and Game can help set you on the right path there. But definitely Western Oregon and parts of Eastern Oregon are very easy. You can if you're traveling from back east, drive out here, or just get a rental truck and drive spot and stalk off the logging roads, and just practice patience. Be out there all day, even in the heat of the day. That's bears don't mind extremely hot days this time of year, and a lot of times they'll be up feeding all day. They might fall asleep, but they're not leaving that area if there are food sources there.
Yeah, and I've heard that bears are late to rise, but I think we do a lot of turkey hunting where we bear hunt as well. So we'll spend the early mornings turkey hunting, and we've spotted bears at 6:30 in the morning, and just threw the whole philosophy of that out the window. So, like you said, all day.
Yeah, I agree. We've killed a lot of bears that, just like any big game, usually that first and last hour I've found to be the best for bears too, but I've killed a lot of bears in the middle of the day. Killed my biggest Oregon bear, 2 seasons ago at 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 days left in the season, and he was dogging a sow really hard. But, it was 80 degrees that day, and he just came right out like he was supposed to.
Well, thanks, Scott. And again, such a huge resource on bear hunting. And like you said, you mentioned that you might have a book coming out soon. I know you have like you said, a dozen books out, all things hunting, and even the cooking books. You're a great resource. Where can folks find out more about all your books and all your resources?
Yeah, well, thanks. I appreciate it. It's the books can be ordered on my website, just scotthaugen.com. It's just my name, SCOTTHAUGEN. All the books are there. There's hunting and fishing books. I have a blacktail book, a western turkey hunting book, which you mentioned turkey hunting. That's one of the best spring combination hunts anywhere in the country is coming out here and hunting bear and turkey. So don't overlook that possibility. As far as the cookbooks, they can also be bought off my website or my wife's website, tiffanyhaugen.com. Also on my wife's website, tiffanyhaugen.com, she has several bear recipes, including how to render that bear fat. Perfect. A lot of pictures that'll walk you through that. Our TV show, The Hunt, is no longer on the air. It's available on Amazon Prime. Crossing over into some other things right now. I've done a little hosting of Alaska Outdoors TV on the Outdoor Channel, but looking to launch a new online business here pretty soon. I am looking to get back on that bear book. That's on my to-do list. I have to write another book for a publisher here real quick, another fishing book, but I'm hoping to get on that book this spring and have it out maybe early in 2016 is what I'm shooting for.
Oh, we'll be excited to read it. I mean, we just barely touched the surface, I feel like, on the whole bear hunting thing. I know you do a lot of seminars too, Scott. Where can folks find you at seminars and talk to you about this more?
Our seminar schedule is listed on my website as well under the event section. Our next one, where we're going to be, both Tiffany and I are speaking at the National NRA Convention in Nashville. After that, we're at a Cabela's grand opening, and then I'm going to be keynote speaking at an Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife annual meeting later on in April. Our speaking schedule usually is in the winter and spring months, so people can just look on our events calendar and see where we're going to be. Of course, we're always available for questions on email, Facebook. Follow us on Twitter and Instagram as well.
Nice. Does I forgot to mention or forgot to ask, does your wife have a pro staff for this tasting team?
Pretty much consists of the boys and I, and then a few neighbors.
I'm sure your boys eat well.
Yeah.
Well, thanks again, Scott. And if you guys didn't catch that, we'll have all the links to the show in the show notes at therichoutdoors.net. Full links to Scott's stuff if you can't find his, and check him out. He's got a lot of amazing resources on all things hunting. And thanks again, Scott, for joining us on the podcast.
Hey, thank you anytime, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, sir. Have a good one. Hey guys, thanks for listening, and we hope you enjoyed the show and maybe even picked up a few tips along the way. Join us right here every Thursday morning for more interviews and great hunting tips. And be sure to help us out by leaving a review on iTunes. For more information about this show and the rest of our guests, check out the show notes for links and additional resources on our website, www.therichoutdoors.net.